Welcome to Navigating Change, everyone, the podcast from Teibel Inc. I'm Pete Wright. That's Howard Teibel.
That's Pete Wright.
The thinker.
No, you're the thinker.
You've been
I'm
thinking.
The doer.
No, I can tell. You've been ruminating. We're talking about this is what we're talking about today. And I had to actually write you and say I have no idea what you're talking about when you give me this topic. The topic is the hybrid approach to organizational change. The hybrid approach to organizational. Is that what you said?
I have no idea what we're talking about. Is that really the topic?
That's what you wrote.
I know. I'm just teasing you. I want to you can't make it to Pete sweat. That's really I can't do anything to make him sweat. I'm watching
water off a duck's back, my friend. Hey, this is
all right. Let's talk about the hybrid.
This is your
approach.
show. This is, I'm sure, why people show up.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. So here's the hybrid approach.
Yes.
Hybrid is this idea that there's one way to do it, second way of doing it, and the hybrid approach is finding a way of doing it where maybe you take the best of both. Right.
Okay.
That's often what I think when I use the word hybrid. It's not necessarily a third. It's like looking at the first one, what's good about it, looking at the second, and finding the best of those both. And so
what are those two? What are the two things you're picking from? The two models you're choosing from?
Being an expert versus being a guide.
Okay.
Okay. So that's one way of framing this conversation.
Okay.
So who should be listening carefully to this are all of my clients and even consultants who are I've been doing this for enough years that I think a very important distinction that we need to talk about is the difference actually as it relates to really leaving a client in a better position. See, what's more important, showing how much we know or having the client be better off? And I think historically there has been lots of consulting that's been about showing how much we know, here's the fundamental difference. As a consultant, one way of holding it is I know something you don't and you need me. You can't do it without me because I have something that when I reveal to you will be your answer, and then you can just follow my solution, and that is a very narrow and I think very often incomplete solution in a consultant's role.
That's
and it happens a lot.
Consulting as product, right?
Consulting as product.
And the value is my smarts and my years of work. There has to be a dollar sign associated with that, such that I can feed my family as a consultant. But this is the once you teach a man to fish.
Yeah, but so let me make a distinction here for anybody in there that works for a consulting firm and what their focus is audit, right? They're a consulting firm that makes millions of dollars around audit practice, right? They're considered consultants. Well, there's some expertise, there's some disciplines that demand an expertise, and you have it, or I have it, the client doesn't, I bring that, and you give me an answer. I'm talking about organizational consulting.
Right.
I'm not talking about being a surgeon to like cut something out and then you're fixed. And there's a place for that.
No, of course.
I'm talking about, but I think it's subtle because I still think there's a tendency, and I think I could even see it in myself, that the longer I do it, the more I could be thinking I have something that my clients don't have. And that's just not true. And the dilemma is, and this gets back to the Edgar Schein philosophy of process consultation, that concept that's been around for 40, 50 years, brilliant concept, is that really what we have when we're doing our best work, we are paying attention closely to where our clients are and what they need, and we're giving them what they need when they need it, and we are not giving them solutions prematurely, and that we are really listening carefully to what it means to leave them in a better position. And the danger of not having this point of view, and I've seen this happen, is I've taken on projects where I think the institution or the person thinks going in that my recommendation or solution will allow them to check it off and they're done. When in fact, my solution is really about putting them in a better position to then take the thing forward. And a lot of consulting dies on the vine because, and I'm holding up right now, a thick binder, right? And it sits on the shelf. It's a brilliant idea, a brilliant piece of work. You get paid thousands of dollars for it, and then it sits on the shelf. And it sits on the shelf because there's no real link or thread between what's in that and implementing internally. That's when the consultants leave, right? Now, I think a lot of good consulting. Go ahead.
Well, it seems like maybe this is what you're about to say, so forgive me, but it seems like what you're saying is the product, rather than having this product be this binder that you've created as a product or for a client, that the real product is the service of institutional learning, right? It's not necessarily teaching you something you don't know, but teaching you how to think about something you already know in a new way.
That's right. And there are places where we bring, so here's a good example. More of our work is helping with, for example, benchmarking, right? So we're doing numbers of projects where an institution wants to benchmark their institutional's, for example, administrative structure against a peer institution. That data can be very helpful, right? It will inform, where are they as an outlier in certain areas. That's different from them thinking that in itself is going to solve the problem. That in many ways the conversation, the best work we've ever done and we ever do is where the relationship is a partnership. I can think of a relationship right now where they really own the problem and the brainstorming and the solutions. And what we're doing is helping them in a guiding capacity. That partnership is rare because it demands that the people you're helping recognize they have a role to play here. And one of the things that I'm always looking for and increasingly looking for the longer I'm doing this is, do I have a partnership on the other side? Do I have, and our job, by the way, is to help with them taking ownership in the process. So the hybrid approach is recognizing we as consultants have expertise, but the value is not in our expertise. Now, we all know this, and I'm sure anyone listening is nodding their heads. In practice, that's really hard to do. Because when I open my mouth, if I'm speaking in front of 200 people, and you see the pens come out when I say something, right? I'm standing there going, what I'm saying now is not important to write down. It's not going to help you. What's going to help you is your ability to hear that and say, all right, what do I do about that? Now, I get it. People write it down because they thought it was an interesting tidbit. And in some ways we can get seduced by, having great insight, but that's not where the value lives. And it's an interesting dance. And I think we have to always keep our feelers up, both the people we're helping and us as helpers, whether or not we are focused on the right things. And in some sense, what we should be doing is going into a client engagement with this conversation. I can tell you, I rarely do. I have this mindset, what I'm describing here, but I can see great value even doing it more, describing what a successful engagement looks like from a partnership standpoint. Well, and that doesn't happen enough.
I would be interested in your thoughts on why that doesn't happen enough, because it seems like what you're from what you are describing, and from the the fact that the pencils come out when you say something particularly witty, it seems like you have to do a lot more education because you may be an island in this approach with clients.
By the way, not witty, intelligent. When they write it down, it's not because I was funny, because it was a brilliant idea.
It's a big question. Which would you rather be known for on your headstone?
You know what's really sad is that my comment was just witty. It wasn't intelligent.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, let's.
You were saying no. I'm talking about this is important stuff. It's that client engagement. So you use the word seduced, and that I really love the word. I think that seems to be really appropriate here. It's this idea that when you go in as a consultant to have a conversation about partnership, how easy it would be to be seduced by the fact that you are the expert in this scenario. And what you're saying is that the training, maybe you're not the expert. And then if I'm listening to this as an institution, say I'm a board member or a president of an institution, how would you like me to think about this framework of our relationship?
Good. So this is a perfect time to describe. We do three things, right? And you know this because you've been helping us for years with this. We help with looking at organizational structure and making choices around that. We help with building team and having effective strategy conversations. And we help with looking institutionally at whether the programs and services you're offering are things you want to do more of, less of, and what are some of the big ideas. So the nature of our work is we come in and we work with individuals, often leaders who then delegate it to their teams, to come up with changes. And I can tell you that if it's a strategy team building, these kinds of events, 90% of the time, are wonderful during. We walk away and everyone wants to hug because it was amazing. It's a Friday afternoon. They go home on a Monday. They forgot what happened on Friday. And by the following Friday, it's a memory, right? Why? Because we don't treat it like what's most important here is how are we going to acclimate it, right? So that's for the kind of like group events. But even organizational restructuring, we're in lots of different conversations around structure. And a very legitimate question to ask us is, what do you see elsewhere, right? We're structured like this. What do you see elsewhere? And I could give an answer in some cases. Sometimes I don't have a good answer because we don't have it's not a good comparison, or it's not a peer institution. But I can tell you that the danger in giving that answer, that we see the best practice. We're always asked, what's the best practice? Tell us the best practices, right? And I can tell you that 90% of the time when someone's asking me the question, they're the ones with the best practices because they're interested in improving. And the question for them is not what the school or institution next door is doing. That happens to be something that we've observed that is not necessarily a pretty high bar, right? So the best practice we see out here is expert. I got to tell you something. There's a lot of making stuff up when we talk about best practices. There's a lot, because best practices is really the thing that stands out, but it doesn't necessarily point to that it's effective. What's the best practice for procurement? Well, I can demonstrate something that maybe this institution is doing that you're not doing, but is that really the next practice you should be doing? I think the much better term from best practice is what are the next practices? And that's tough because it's ambiguous.
Well, that also speaks to transformational change.
What we talked about last time.
Right.
That to not focus on just being slightly better than the institution next door, I'm not sure if that's a high enough aspiration, right? So the reason I brought up best practices in this conversation is I think leaders look to consultants to guide them to come up with what they should be doing in comparison to other institutions that might be like them. And what I'm telling you is that although that data might be useful, it is not going to solve your problem. And your institution is significantly different. It's a different culture. You've got different constraints in terms of people. And thinking that you're going to do something differently from the other institution from a best practice standpoint, or slightly different, or imitate them, that's not going to get you to where you want to get to.
This gets to there's this expectation that your experience or your expertise is cached in one of two areas: either what I as the consultant know, or what I as the consultant have seen. what I know
Yes.
versus what I've seen. And
Yeah.
while, yes, there is expertise that lies somewhere between the two, so much of the value of the consultant relationship is, as you described, bringing what you have borne witness to other institutions to help at least illuminate that there are other institutions doing things in a different way. And I'm not saying that that's what to aspire to, but that's what it seems to me as a client is the perceived value, right? And what I hear you saying is that perhaps reframing that discussion from a client perspective is, what are you really looking for in a consultant is to really reframe institutional learning in a way that allows us to do what we do even better.
I'm a firm believer that you, for the most part, you, individual, department, division, institution, can solve your own problems. Now, you need data, you might need guidance, but fundamentally, you can solve your own problem. I think that's what they want to hear. I think that's what they need to hear. And I think it's too often the case that we don't put enough energy and focus on, so how are you going to, with the information you have, how are you going to take that forward? And I think there's too much emphasis on we don't have enough data, right? In some ways, it's a procrastination conversation. We need more data. What's enough data, right? I can tell you that, schools have institutional research divisions that can get so much data or can get the right data for them. But all you really have to do is saying, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Therefore, what data do we need for that? And then the elephant in the room conversation is around decision making. That's 90%, in my opinion, about where the brakes get put on. It's around decision making. Is that the institutions are fundamentally not prepared to make tough decisions in a timely way, right? And that's in some ways that's a whole other conversation.
Well, I feel
our
like
job
this ties so well into this conversation about making difficult decisions. It's we talked about several weeks ago from a senior leadership perspective, right? This right here is where strong leadership shines.
That's right, and our role as consultants, I think, for the most part, should be focused on where are you stuck. What do you need and where are you stuck and how can we help unstick you, but not do it for you? And the dilemma sometimes is the people that we're assisting or helping inadvertently think that we have something that they don't have. When in fact, my message of 28 years is, I can help you help yourself. That is fundamentally, and to me, it's the right way to do this. Because I'm going to walk away. You have to live with it. I cannot. So there's a certain, and here's what I think is going on too, Pete. There's so much more of these kinds of projects happening where it's not just we want to put in a new system. The system is just the system. There's the cultural piece of it. There's how the institution reacts. There's do we have the right people doing the task? Those kinds of conversations demand having tough conversations internally. And there are more of those kinds of projects out there than ever before. It used to be the case you could be very sort of siloed and here's a project, we want to put this thing in, thank you very much, we're done. That's not how things work. And it's becoming more and more, and I think that's why people are struggling so much, is because there are so many different choices. It's almost like we're developing an increasing list of things we want to do. And it's not even so much we're not taking the things off the list that should come off. We're not completing the things that we started. So we have partially completed tons of things that we don't navigate and get off of our list of saying, oh, we've got this completed, right? The last conversation we were with the cabinet, and we put up on the screen 25 major projects that they have in front of them. And again, it is an overwhelming picture for people. They get immobilized in that. And in some ways, it's a slightly different conversation that we're having right now What we can do when we're doing it well is we can help people focus on what they need to get done, what they can get done, and then be targeted in how we help. We can't be all things to all people, and I think that's the other piece of this that I've learned over the years. We got to be smart about where we really can assist, and then step back and see how it's acclimating, and then offer assistance as they're struggling through it.
It's such a valuable thing to talk about. I think it's a topic there's a related topic we probably haven't addressed enough, which is this idea of organizational complexity that is significant. But so much of what I have learned from you is this idea of being aware of where you are stuck and how important that awareness is to achieving change, right? Being very clear that you are right now mired in the complexity of your organization. You are right now mired in the abundance of great ideas. You are mired right now in you're mired in the way your leadership has not been able to make decisions. Like understanding what those problems are really are helpful in change. So this is a hugely valuable conversation.
Yeah, it's great, and I probably anything that I. Here's the other attitude. I've been doing it for 28 years, and I know I can still be getting better at this. This is the lifelong learning, not getting stuck into thinking that my job is to solve. I think our jobs in our work is to guide, right? And that's a tough thing to remind yourself about, because if people say, "What do I need to do?" the tendency is really easy, to be a fixer. I can fix your problem, right? You know what? I might be able to fix it, but it's going to be temporary because I'm going away.
Right.
So it's it's a lot.
I would love to have had this conversation with Howard Teibel, say 18 years ago, and look at him side by side.
It would be a very different conversation. A lot more hair, a lot less gray. A lot more hair. The young Howard Teibel. I'm afraid to even say what was the young Howard Teibel. No, we could have such an interesting conversation about. I was just talking to someone about
lessons
that.
Learned.
Well, you hate it. I hate when this happens. I hate when you're holding your child when they were younger. This is years ago. Quick anecdote. And someone walks up to you and says, "So how old's your grandson?" Oh, you hate that.
I hate it when that happens.
I hate when that happens.
Oh. With great respect to Billy Crystal. I think that was.
Is that where that came from?
Right? Yeah.
Oh,
I hate it when that happens.
I hate when that happens.
When you eyeball,
exactly.
Forget it. Howard, as always, insightful, fantastic conversation. Thanks for your time and expertise. You can find us at teibelinc.com, where you can subscribe for free. You can read the backlog or the archive of articles and posts on the blog. Subscribe to the show in iTunes or Stitcher Smart Radio, and as always, you can find us right here next week. Navigating Change, the podcast from Teibel Inc.